Okay, welcome. Tonight we're going to talk about a topic that hits near and dear to all of us who have concern, praise, all emotions to 4,400 children. Those are the kids in school. Those are our kids in all the schools in Milford. An idea has come up and gone away for now, but about does Milford need a charter school? Whether we want one or not, the real question is, do we need them? Some people may want them, some people may not. But as we went through some of the background of charter schools, I was surprised. I was very, very surprised at how much I did not know about charter schools. So we've asked somebody to come on, and we'll introduce him now and talk about charter schools and the effect they could have on Milford.
Hi everybody, I'm Nick Molinari, the president of the Milford Teachers Association and the school librarian at Milford High School. And I've been in that role as a librarian. This is my 13th year, and union president, I've lost track, maybe 6 years now.
Now, I got to start because the Milford Teachers Union.
Yes.
Very different from any other teachers union I've ever heard of. You know, I remember when we went through the budget crunches.
Yeah.
And I've never been so proud to be in Milford as when we had to deal with the budget cuts that hit every department. And I heard of all the towns around us were deferring teachers' raises.
Yeah.
Which I never understood, because if I can't afford to pay for it now, how am I going to afford to pay double?
Yeah, right.
Our teachers union, and these are union members, came up to us and said, we'll cut you a deal to the finance committee. We'll give up our raises if you promise you'll keep that money in the school system.
What year was this?
Oh God, this was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. It had to be Romney era. What was it, 2003? But that always hit me to say, what other union do you ever hear of going into a negotiation saying they'll give up their raises?
Well, that wasn't when I was president. No, I'm just kidding. No, we do. We have an excellent association. We're really well supported by the townspeople, families, and we've got 100% union membership, which is excellent. So there was a bill passed recently, or no, sorry, a Supreme Court decision where you couldn't charge agency fees anymore to negotiate a contract, and a lot of the unions across the country were saying, oh my God, we're going to lose all these members. And I remember the press reached out to me and I said, if the only thing that's holding our association together is an agency fee law, then we're not a very good association. And it turned out I was right. We didn't lose any members. So we're still at 100%.
Teachers don't have to be in the union?
No, nope. The contract is negotiated exclusively with the Milford Teachers Association. Right.
But I can take advantage of whatever you negotiate and not pay in.
Right, and that was one of the big problems. Well, you can take advantage of some parts of it. So the agreement itself that governs your salary and things like that, yes, but there's a lot of additional benefits that come in terms of legal representation, things like that wouldn't be included for non-members.
Now, I've always not understood. I mean, when Upton Sinclair and the Muckrakers first started in the 20s, unions were desperately needed.
Yeah.
Is a union necessary in today's day and age?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. I think one of the most important reasons why, especially in the public sector, it's because you're negotiating with the town. It's different than normal business interactions where it's different private parties negotiating. But in terms of negotiating with a town and a larger group and in working with the public, I think it's really important to have them. Sometimes, I'll tell teachers this, that you've got a moral obligation when you become a teacher that you need to do what's best for your students. And in order to do that, there's certain protections you need, and that's what the association guarantees. So sometimes I might speak out on behalf of my students, and a certain family or an administrator might disagree with what I'm doing, but I know what's best for the kids because I'm a trained professional and all those things. And the association makes sure that you can do that and advocate for your kids without any fear of reprisal.
See, I've always worried that the unions
Mhm.
would protect the underachievers.
Yeah, right. That's a common concern we hear.
Because the overachievers
Mhm.
don't need protection.
Mm-hmm. There was actually the evaluation tools for the state changed. I don't know the year, not that long ago, and it was very controversial because it basically set up a system where it was easier to get rid of an underperforming teacher. So this system was actually developed by the state of Massachusetts in collaboration with the Massachusetts Teachers Association, because they've always said, we're a union of professionals. We're not here to just to protect bad teachers. It's basically so that, like I told you, we can advocate for the things that are important, including working conditions for teachers. So it's not as difficult as some people like to think.
To get rid of somebody?
Yeah.
That's good to hear because,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've always said I would be the first, even though I'm on the finance committee
Mm-hmm.
and I'm cheap,
Yeah.
I would be the first one to advocate that teachers should get $100,000 a year
Mm-hmm.
if two little words could be used, at will.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you really could, like in industry,
Yeah.
we cull the bottom 5%
Mm-hmm.
every year
Right.
and hire new blood, people who want to work hard.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at Milford, the interactions I've had with teachers,
Mm-hmm.
probably 99% of them
Mm-hmm.
really care.
Yeah. But one of the problems with at will is what if you have a particular political movement come through town or a particular group of administrators that come through town that don't know what they're doing. Like right now we're blessed with an excellent school committee and a good administration, but you don't always have that. It's, we've gone through many administrators. So I think it helps with that uncertainty. So that way due process is followed and things are on the up and up.
But we face that in every other job there is out there. I mean, if I get a bad CEO come in,
Mm-hmm.
he could just look at me and, you don't fit anymore.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Nobody's going to protect me.
Yeah, I know, that's unfortunate, but you're not in charge of educating the children. So I think that's the essential difference.
And help me understand why they get 2 months off.
Teachers,
wouldn't I
sanity is a good one.
Why wouldn't I want them working, recharging their batteries?
Well, the vast majority of teachers take an incredible amount of work home. So I think we're contracted for maybe it's 37 hours a week. But during those summer times or those times off, the requirements for the education somebody has to have, they're difficult to meet. You need advanced graduate degrees. You need to continuously, even once you have them, you need to continue to get recertified and take different courses. You're always revising your curriculum and the things you're teaching the kids. Different educational initiatives will come through, and this happens all the time. So, it's not just come in, teach, and go home. There's an incredible amount of work just grading papers. Imagine you're teaching English and you assign 30 kids a 5-page paper each. Now, I'm not good at math, but that's a lot of papers to read. And there's no time to do that during the day, so all of that work comes home with you.
Well, I can vouch for the educational part because my daughter, to be transparent, is
That's
an
right,
educator
yeah,
at Milford High.
Mm-hmm.
And she comes over on the weekends and sometimes at night and forces me to play with my grandkids.
Yeah.
Because she has to study for her PhD or catch
Right.
up on paperwork.
Right, exactly. Milford's great because they reimburse very generously a lot of the courses we take, which is excellent, and that shows that the town really cares about the quality of its teaching faculty.
So is it working?
Milford?
The school system. It's so easy to listen. You got a 99. Well, let me focus on the 1% that you missed.
I know.
And we've got very vocal critics
Mm-hmm.
that tell us how bad Milford school system is.
Well, I think it says a lot that I school choice my daughter into Milford from another town. So, and that's because I know the elementary schools are fantastic and the high school offers a really comprehensive education. So you're going to be able to get to take courses and be prepared for college better than any of the surrounding schools.
Well, to me, we all have our biases.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask school committee, they're very proud of what they do. You ask teachers. To me, no, they're not the test. To me, the test is the colleges. Because if Milford school system was all that bad, my daughters both wouldn't have gotten into every school they applied to. Now you take all the I love Milford and all that out of there. When Lexi applied to 7 or 8 different schools and all of them accepted her, that tells me more than Kevin or somebody telling me how great the school is.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I feel that your roles are to educate, but really get my kids to a level where they can get into any school they want. And it seems to be working.
Yeah, it's consistent. It wasn't just your daughters. We've got a pretty strong track record of kids going to excellent institutions and coming back and saying, those research papers that you guys forced us to write, they went a long way, Yeah,
and the curriculum itself. I mean, I was one of the kids my senior year. So first year that high school was open, I got banished to Franklin. There were 3 of us. We ran out of science and math courses.
Yeah.
And luckily, we had probably the best principal I've ever met in my life, Uncle Paul Raftery.
Oh, I've heard a lot about him.
And he sent us to Dean Jr.
Yep.
to take biology and chemistry because
No
he said,
kidding.
okay, you guys are done here.
Yeah.
And 3 days a week, we drove to Dean Junior College.
Wow, no kidding.
And that was before the internet and before everything. It was his only way of saying, how do I keep you on a track?
Yeah.
Couldn't complain then. I mean, today I see what the kids can do in the media center. I mean, when we first started, the greatest part, they had a 12-track sound system, and if nobody was looking, you could sneak Aerosmith onto track 12.
Not much has changed. They're still pulling stuff like that, but that's funny.
That was the funniest thing in the world is the telltale sign was when one of the teachers would walk in and the kids are sitting there like this, nodding their heads and grooving along, and all of a sudden you sit there and say, they're not reading Shakespeare. I know they're not.
Yeah.
So, charter school.
Yes.
Sounds like a wonderful idea. You get a private school, best education possible, it's all free. What's the reality?
Well, there's a darker side to charter schools. There, and on a number of different levels, I've got problems with it. One that I think really hits me the most is the lack of local control over the schools. That has always been one of the biggest issues, that the state, for instance, can come in and establish this school without the approval of the population. So they can come in and grant a charter to, say, a private corporation or...
Wait a minute. You and I can be appointed to run a school in Milford?
Yes.
And our taxpayers have no say?
Absolutely no say. So the selectmen, the school committee, none of those people have any say over whether or not it can come here and over how that works, how it functions, the school at all, no say.
Well, wait a minute, when you say how it functions.
So the internal workings of the school, the policies and procedures, the curriculum, all of that, none of that has any oversight from local elected officials.
Okay, I'm having a hard time envisioning that somebody from Boston
Yeah, because it's insane.
is going to come to Milford, our town, and tell us, don't worry about how your kids are going to get educated.
Right.
We know better than you.
Yes.
And I have nothing to say about it?
Nothing, yeah, and that's what I find, that's one of the most difficult things to swallow, that it can be imposed on a community without the community's approval. And sometimes the community is downright against it and vocally opposed to it, and they've been instituted anyway. Now that's started to shift the last couple of years. The associations fought a lot against it, the larger Massachusetts Teachers Association, but a lot of families have started to get involved, and people from every side of the political spectrum have gotten involved and said, wait a minute, something's not right about this.
Now, again, no insult intended, but frankly, I care less about what a union of people who, not all from Milford. Now, we're lucky in Milford that it seems like most of our teachers are from Milford.
Yeah.
But I don't care what strangers say
Mm-hmm.
as much as I care about my neighborhood.
Right.
People, I say the kids I grew up with, at our age we're not kids, but
Mm-hmm.
we take a lot of pride
Mm-hmm.
in taking care of our kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've gotten up more than once and said, I don't need somebody from Beacon Hill or Capitol Hill
Mm-hmm.
to tell us, town meeting, how to raise our children.
Right.
And you're saying they're going to come in,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to put a building down
Yes.
or rent a building.
Mm-hmm.
We have nothing to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they can enroll our kids.
Well, they're going to rent the building with your money.
Whoa.
You're paying for the building.
Oh, because the state's paying for it.
Well, they're paying, yeah, half. They pay half the per student spending, and we pay half the per student spending.
What you mean we, Kimosabe?
Meaning the taxpayers of Milford, they when you've got the per student spending for
so
every school.
$13,000 a year we get
If that's
for
the
high
number.
school, whatever it is.
Right, so now, correct me if I'm wrong, the town contributes half of that amount and the state contributes the other
We
half.
get 47 cents on the dollar from the state.
Okay, right, so
So
that,
if it costs, let's say it costs 15 grand to educate a kid.
yeah,
We get about 7 from the state, and we got to put up the other 8.
right, so you're still gonna have to put up that other 8 for all the kids that go to that school that are from the town of Milford.
Even though we don't have anything to say about it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so now wait a minute. I'm a little slow here.
Mm-hmm,
We just spent $61 million
mm-hmm.
building an elementary school.
Yeah, beautiful new school.
And that's predicated on kids being in there.
Mm-hmm,
If you start taking the kids out,
mm-hmm.
I can't take a 24th of a teacher's salary out.
Right, exactly.
So they're going to force me to pay for somewhere that I have no control over,
Mm-hmm.
people that I don't know. Do I have any say in hiring them?
No, nothing at all.
Oh, wait a minute now.
Yeah, no, really, it's the truth, yeah.
I mean, this I would understand in the People's Republic of Cambridge,
Mm-hmm.
but this is Milford.
Yeah,
So I'd have no control at all.
none, yeah, it's really, it's a disturbing trend in education, but fortunately, it sounds like the momentum is going in the other direction. So when we had the No on 2 campaign, which was, they were proposing at a state level to lift the cap on charter schools. So right now, the state's got a very strict cap on charter schools. It can only, they can only be a certain amount statewide, and the number of students enrolled can only come up to a certain amount of the overall population of the school. So the proposal was to lift that cap, get rid of it, and it's just a
Basically
free-for-all.
privatized education.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. But that got rejected by a large margin. I think it was like 70-30, and if you look at the breakdown of voters in Milford, we reflected that same number. Just about 70% were opposed to lifting the cap, which was
So now,
great.
There's got to be at least a theoretical pro. If you're going to put a new program in,
Yep.
somebody just didn't wake up and say, I want to take away all control of Milford education from Milford. What's the advantages that the proponents
Well,
claim?
in terms of Milford, I don't know.
But in general, a charter
Yeah,
school.
in general, I mean, I think that there are 2 reasons. One, they think that there's this new educational initiative that's so promising that you can risk putting students in an unproven system. And 2, I think in some communities, the state has deemed the community so incompetent that it can't educate its own children, so they come in and impose these. So you'll see more charter schools in areas with a lot of poverty and places like that.
Yeah, but if you take some of the places, you know, like in Springfield or Lawrence, that the state's already paying 80%. I mean, Milford gets 47% of the school funding from the state. Other places, the state's already paying 80+%.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, that's always been the issue we have, that we're getting penalized for running a good show.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard many times from different town administrators that they can't afford the government they want.
Yeah.
Never understood that. I mean, we can't afford the government we want, but we make it happen. But, you know, I sit there and I say, well, if that's the case, Why wouldn't they just come in and take over the school system?
Well, they can't right now. There's laws that prevent that. So laws that give the authority to school committees, local elected officials. But that law would have changed things dramatically. And when I went and spoke with the school committee, that was one of the number one concerns I had, that control was being taken away from them, and that's why they ought to be concerned about that, and they were. So
now
we
you put
had a resolution.
a school in,
Mm-hmm.
normal, a Woodland, a Brookside, it's 350 kids.
Yep.
You're going to take half of them from Milford? Maybe?
Yeah, who knows?
So all of a sudden...
Well, probably more, because in Milford, we would be responsible for busing all of the students to that school.
Oh,
So
come on.
I swear, so that's another,
No.
another expense, yeah. So we would have to bus all of these kids there, but if you're from outside of Milford, you're responsible for bringing your kids.
Just like school choice. If
Right.
you're school choice, you have to bring your son,
Right, so I drop Olivia, my
your
daughter, I
daughter.
drop her off at Memorial every morning.
but the town, I don't have to send the bus to Northbridge
Right,
to get
exactly,
Olivia.
right. But that makes it less likely for people to be commuting from out of the area. You know, you're gonna get a lot more people from within the area where transportation's provided.
So we lose the 47 cents on the dollar we get,
Mm-hmm,
and we still have the expense of busing them.
mm-hmm.
Okay, this is starting to seem more and more appetizing. isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
I think the part that bothers me the most is, though, we have no control.
Me too, and that's what bothers me because, and I said this to the lady from the Milford Daily News, that it's about community. You're really dividing a community around an area where we ought to be united, and that's public education. And you've got this two-track system where you've got this one school for certain kids, and you know, like other charter schools, they have their ways of getting rid of kids they don't want, or systematically avoiding kids that they don't want. And
Well, we've seen it in BVT.
yeah, that would be a good
I mean, that's
example.
essentially a charter school. Nobody can take away from Dr. Fitz that unbelievable results.
Mm-hmm.
But I've heard over and over, if you're not the top 10% of the class,
Mm-hmm.
you ain't getting in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if I get to pick the top 10%
Mm-hmm.
of the academically inclined children to begin with,
Right.
seems like there's pretty good odds that I'll do well.
Sure, it's just like a classroom. If I get to educate just the top 10% of the class, they're all going to get A's, you know. But if you start to mix more kids in there, it's a much more challenging job.
Now, in Milford,
Mm-hmm.
we're challenged, and I can say it because I was one of these kids who left home, got outside, and said, "What language are these strange people speaking?
Yeah,
Doesn't everybody speak Portuguese?"
yeah.
You know,
My
so-
daughter wants to learn Portuguese because her classmates
There
all
you go.
speak
But
Portuguese.
it's like-
Yeah.
Okay, what's with this English thing? I have to learn English,
Mm-hmm.
but you did?
Yeah.
Now, I think about one of the strengths of Milford
Mm-hmm.
is that we are very diverse.
Yes.
Too many towns around talk about diversity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we talk much about it because we're too busy living it.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Now, I can see in certain parts of large cities
Mm-hmm.
that going to a charter school
Mm-hmm.
has an advantage. If nothing else, security.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, you read about kids getting mugged and knives and
Mm-hmm.
metal detectors to get into the school.
Yeah, yeah. It's an advantage, but at the expense, well, somewhat of an advantage, but at the expense of the larger community.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Right.
I can think of the larger community,
Mhm.
except when it comes to.
And that's and
Here
that's why I
comes
say
Olivia.
it's divisive.
Tell me you're going to
Right.
be neutral and analytical when it
Yeah.
comes down to Olivia.
Right. But if it were me and I were in that situation, assuming that I could afford to do so, I would send her myself to a private school.
But a lot
You
of
know.
people can't.
Right, yeah, they can't, yeah.
So I can see if I'm worried that the kids at Milford High,
Mm-hmm.
that my daughters were in danger,
Right, yeah.
you can talk to me all about
Mm-hmm.
the world and how. No.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, my life is
Mhm.
my two girls.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but do we have that problem in Milford?
No.
I mean, you know, I'm sure that somewhere in the back somebody got their nose bloodied,
Mhm.
just on general principles,
Yeah.
you know, but I have not seen a security issue.
Mm-hmm.
And just a couple years ago, we hired our own SWAT team.
Right, yeah, that's right.
You know, I remember the thing that threw me was when they said, we're part of a regional SWAT initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And the average response time is like 42 minutes, 43 minutes.
Wow.
But the average school incident is over in 18.
Yeah.
So I remember looking at my colleague, chairman, and Chris and I looked at each other and said, my God, how do we not vote for this?
Mm-hmm.
If something ever happened,
Mm-hmm.
how could we look at the parents,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and say, we
Mm-hmm.
save some money?
Right.
So, you know, when I think of the charter school idea of a,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this utopian environment, you know, that the picture's painted.
Well, that's the picture's painted. It's not all
Yeah.
it's cracked
No,
up
but
to
I'm just
be,
saying,
yeah.
you know, you sit there and say, I can see where a private school could keep security tighter
Mm-hmm.
than a school committee trying to do, you know, how many schools?
Yeah. Yeah, possibly. I mean, that is a concern, you know, safety in schools.
But I don't see it in Milford.
I definitely don't see it in Milford at all. So yeah, I mean, it's not a concern that we have. And a lot of the schools around here, like Franklin, they've got a charter school. You know, that's obviously not an issue in Franklin either.
The security.
Right.
So security could be something for a charter school somewhere else,
Yeah, possibly.
but not anything we worry about in Milford.
Yeah.
I mean, we worry about it, but
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's kind of, I would rather see, instead of charter schools, schools that are specifically, you know, within the control of communities that are specifically geared toward helping these students that are violent or have problems like that. Like, why not have the isolated school for these kids that need the special attention, as opposed to just pulling out the top flyers and putting them to another school?
it's interesting because Middle School East,
Yeah.
when Tommy Davern ran it,
Mm-hmm.
I remember him, our orientation as parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Tommy. He was just straight.
He was a great superintendent.
It was his building.
Yep.
Those were his 360 kids.
Yeah.
You know, if you messed with one of them,
Yep.
you were taking Tommy on directly.
Yep.
You could just see the dedication. That was Milford.
And he felt that way about his faculty too. He was always so respectful of his faculty. I remember my first year, he came into the library and I had a stack of newspapers and I was like, oh my God, here, the superintendent's here, you know? And he said, oh, no, you sit down, you drink your coffee, I'm just here. And it was like, this is the superintendent
But he
talking
was
to
very
me.
clear with us that his job was to make sure that every child
Mm-hmm.
got a good education.
Yeah.
And if your child was disrupting the 20 others,
Mm-hmm.
he said, nobody's going to be coddled.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pull them out and call you,
Yeah.
and you're going to have to deal with it.
Yep.
Because, you know, as he said, my job is to educate your children, not raise them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point.
And when I saw that, it made me so comfortable
Mm-hmm.
that, okay, when I'm giving my daughter, I mean, it's scary. You got a daughter. You're turning them over to
Yeah,
somebody.
that's true.
You know, by the time high school came, maybe I got an hour a night
Oh,
to
geez.
see them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were always so busy.
I know, I bet.
You know, that's why I kept coaching soccer till they went to high school, because that way I got 2 hours, 3 nights a week,
Yeah,
guaranteed they had to
Yeah.
be with me.
yeah.
But, you know, you sit there and say, these teachers, they get 6, 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people forget how important a role the teachers play.
Yeah, and that's why they need to be well supported, which Milford does. So one of the problems with charter schools, the turnover rate for new teachers is tremendous. It's incredibly high. I don't have the exact figures, but these people are coming in. It's usually inexperienced educators. They're in there. The
Oh,
workload.
and don't they pay a lot more at charter schools?
Not that I know of. I think it'd be fairly comparable or less, because they're never making it to the top of the pay scale. The turnover is so high. So Milford, when you first start out, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. It might be like 53,000.
Right.
But in order to get up to that, you know,
Yeah, but
75,
You
80,000
move pretty
range.
quick up that ladder.
We've got 10 steps.
Right.
Right. So 10 years, and there's a hurdle step where you have to do various graduate school requirements and things like that. And then there's different lanes.
Then there's the chutes and ladders.
Right, so
then
the
there's all
lanes.
the different lanes
Yeah.
that go up. And
Yeah.
because I was going to say, when I look at the budget,
Yeah.
teachers move pretty quick.
We've got a great contract. The last 2 contracts I've been really happy with. And I tell people that as a selling point. You know, this is a great contract. You know, we've been negotiating with the town, the Milford Teachers Association. I think it's something like 100 years. I've got the old records in my office.
But again, I'll never forget when we were in, well, I wouldn't say we were in trouble, but when Milford was hurt,
This was 2008?
I think it was 3.
Okay, so this was before my
Romney.
time. Okay, yeah, it was before my time. Yeah.
Our teachers offered, they came in, their first offer was to give up their raises. Just, they're gone.
Yeah.
But you have to guarantee that the money you save stays in the school system to protect teachers.
All right, so you're not letting go of half the faculty.
Well, I mean, you sit there and say, how much more could you ask?
Yeah, no, they're a reasonable group of people.
But they're all, not all, that's an exaggeration.
Right.
But there's a lot of Milford parents that are Milford teachers.
Yeah, there are quite a few.
So, you know, you look and say, we're starting with a stacked deck because we have people who love Milford to begin with.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so, but it was always, again, one of the myths, well, you have better teachers in charter school because they pay a lot more.
No, definitely not.
And if they paid a heck of a lot more, then they'd stay a lot longer.
Yeah, well, but it's not even that. It's more, I mean, if we were in this for the money, we'd be in a different occupation, you know, with the level of education that a lot of educators have. But it's more about, I think they're getting burned out, you know, their days are 2 hours longer. There's that stress of if your students aren't performing at a certain level, you're going to be let go at any minute. You're not given that freedom to really, you know, be the teacher that you want to be. There's so many pressures coming from outside.
Every minute?
Well, so if you're working at a charter school and you know, your students aren't performing up to snuff according to whatever test or whatever measure they're using, at the end of the year, they can say, "See you later." So it's a yearly contract. At least most charter schools are that way. There might be a few that operate with slightly longer contracts, but you don't have like a tenure system or.
But now, I got to tell you, as a layman, that doesn't sound bad to me. That the teachers who aren't making it, you know, the bottom couple percent or so,
right,
get replaced.
But you have to. What is the standard you're measuring them by?
Well,
you know, so that's the real key. How do you define a successful teacher? That's
I know
different
how.
for a lot. How's that?
My kids got into any college they wanted.
Oh, there you go. That's great. That's a
You
great.
know,
That's a
at
great.
the end of the day,
gauge.
if Milford and finished college,
Yeah, right. Which
I mean,
is important.
you got to look at both sides. That if they got in and then flunked out,
Right. Yeah.
Now, I mean, I was one of the kids who left Milford High, got to Holy Cross, realized almost 80% of the kids around me came from private schools. So they had a lot more, you know, courses that I needed to catch up on, and realized, oh my God, I got to study to get A's.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And when my Emily got there, the dean was amazing. She says, how many people here are the top 10% of their high school class? Every hand.
Wow. No kidding.
She looked and said, okay, now get used to it. 90% of you no longer are.
Yeah.
And it was
the
an
reality.
awakening.
Yeah.
But Emily made it, and she did well.
That's great.
And she came out of college and got a very nice job. Certainly paying a heck of a lot more than I ever made.
Yeah. Right.
You know, so to me, when you say, how do you rate a teacher? I don't care how much I like you, how, if your kids are failing,
Well, one of the problems, though, with the test is, you know, you obviously you're responsible for educating your kids, but at a certain point, and this was the problem with the state tool, they put the entire evaluation tool was originally formulated just based on the MCAS scores, and the formula they were using was nonsensical, but it would basically say, like, if your kids aren't performing on the MCAS, then you're not performing well as a teacher. But there's so many variables that come into that a teacher doesn't have control over. You know, this kid, you know, could be coming from an abusive home. This kid didn't eat breakfast. Well, yeah, when they come in to take the MCAS exam, they're thinking about horrible things that might be happening, or the fact that they have no food in their belly. But
they're hungry.
Right, but it's the teacher's fault that they didn't perform well on the MCAS. And so it doesn't take into account variables like that.
The problem I would have is, to me, if a kid came in at level 2 and the teacher brought him up to level 4, whatever those levels are, okay, you're doing well. If a kid came in at level 2 and went down to level 1, then I got a problem.
Right, but that's why it got stretched out. It said, so now you have to take into account a larger picture. So if there's a consistent thing where your students aren't doing well, and I've got a number of other measures, so I've observed your class, and all the kids are on cell phones, not paying attention, or half of them are asleep. Well, now I've got, I'm not saying that happens, but it takes into account a larger picture of the educator instead of just looking at this one standardized test score and saying, oh, kids didn't perform this year, see you later.
And I remember when, again, I can talk about anything analytically except my kids.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a bias there.
Yeah.
When Lexi first went to 8th grade, I couldn't resist. And I went up to Tommy and I said, why do your MCAS scores suck?
Yeah.
And of course, I threw the gauntlet right down at his feet, saying, here you go.
What did he say?
He said, because you're ignorant.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'm ignorant. Educate me. And he showed me that our top academic kids, he says, I'll put them up against any town around.
Sure.
The difference is we have a very bimodal distribution. You have kids who are coming in who either had no education, very little education, or had no English language skills. He says, when you expect them to go up against the high academic kids, they don't look good. So you end up with 2 Gaussian curves. Let me take one curve and put it up against any town around. He says, my kids will stand up or beat everyone. And it was interesting because I never thought about that.
Yeah.
We have a very large percentage of kids who are on free lunches.
Yeah, it's increased too. I'm not sure what the number is, but I believe it's over 30%.
I heard 34, 30, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, which is a lot,
Well, and again, if you're coming from home hungry, kind of hard to focus.
Yeah, I know.
Or if you're walking into a class that, if you took me and put me in a Mandarin class, I don't know how well I'd do for a while.
Yeah.
It'd take me a couple of years here to learn.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I'm learning anything about organic chemistry if I'm trying to figure out what the language means.
Right, exactly.
But on the other hand, it's such a wealth of culture.
That's true. And that diversity, you can look at it as a good thing, as a strength.
I hope so. Because otherwise I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, me either.
You start thinking, unless your name is, Squanto or something, you're an immigrant. Somewhere along, even the people who came over on the Mayflower, they're not Native Americans, and we didn't treat them very well. So, you start looking, saying, I'm here, and I have a comfortable life because somebody in Milford welcomed my grandfather. He showed up from Portugal with $32.80 in his pocket.
Yeah.
Lived like a slave to save every penny he could and send it home for his 3 daughters.
Yeah.
To do better. Eventually, they all ended up here.
Yeah, no kidding.
So when I look at what Milford offers, we have challenges. I just don't know how the charter school would help the kids get better.
It would make it worse. Because it's just taking away resources from the school, and like you said before, it's affecting the community. It's dividing the community when we should be united.
And if they don't invest, so we're going to start a charter school, Nick and Al's charter school.
Okay, yeah.
We get a charter for what, 5 years?
Yes, it's a 5-year charter.
And at the end of 5 years, if I didn't do well, what happens?
They close the school down.
And then what happens to the kids?
Who knows? They come back to our school.
So I could be in charter school is like K through 12 or?
It depends. They're all different. This one, I think the one proposed for Milford was K through 8.
Wow. So I could be going 8 years. No matter what, I'm going 8 years and then that's it.
Yes.
I got to go to another school.
Yes. So you'd either be reintegrated back into the public schools or go somewhere else, a private school or another charter school.
Yeah, but again, if I'm just trying to think that by the 8th grade, you had your circle of friends.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
all the kids you grew up with
Yeah.
didn't start in 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you had a couple move in here and there, and they had to establish, you know, their social position.
Yeah, you're right. We still consider some of them the new guy, and it's 20
Yeah.
years later. Yeah.
That's, you know, she's the new kid that moved in sometime.
Yeah.
Well, she's been here 30 years.
Yeah, right.
Of course,
Yeah,
you know the
kid.
definition of a Milfordian.
What's that?
3rd generation Milford, and you have to live within 2 miles of your mother.
Oh, really? All right.
Then you become a true Milfordian.
Okay. Yeah. I'll
You
keep
can live
that in
here
mind.
your whole life, but if you're not within 2 miles of your mother, you're suspect.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, you start thinking about, is this the right thing for the kids? You know, in my mind, if I'm going to invest money into a school system,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to pick on towns around us,
Mm-hmm.
but they should take care of their own kids.
Yeah, I agree with
That extra money, I want to put back into Milford.
you. Mm-hmm.
And if Kevin and, you know, the crowd doesn't do it, shoot them.
Mm-hmm.
Get rid of them.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, there's been initiatives to cut money from their budget.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how that helps improve the school.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're already, I think, significantly under what the per student spending is statewide. I don't know what the numbers are off the top of my head.
You know, I hear that,
Yeah,
but again, Portuguese math,
yeah,
I hear it's $15,000 average and we only spend 13.
yeah.
And I turn around and I say, well, wait a minute, we have now maybe 100 extra kids, but we had 4,400 of our kids,
Yeah.
and we spent $60+ million.
Mm-hmm.
If I divide 60 into 4,
Mm-hmm.
sure feels like 15. Doesn't
Yeah.
feel like we're grossly, you know, underspending.
Yeah.
So I don't know how the math is done,
Yeah.
but you know, the per pupil spending,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the minimum, I keep saying, well, what's counted in that?
That's a good question. I'm just going by the numbers that the state
Yes.
publishes. So if you go like on the DSE site, it will have those. And some, you know, you have to think that some districts have to pay a lot more to educate their kids, you know, because not Milford, but like places like inner cities and stuff
Sure.
cost a lot more to educate a kid. So you have to take that into consideration when you're thinking of what the average is. You know, I wouldn't expect Milford to be, you know, like 10 points over the average,
Right.
you know.
Well,
Yeah, it's not a budget where we could be taking anything out. I definitely wouldn't recommend that.
No, sometimes I think it's just a visceral reaction.
Mhm.
I want to get your attention,
Yeah.
so I'm going to throw an egg at your car.
Mm-hmm.
That'll
Yeah.
get a reaction. you
Yeah.
know. I mean, I've heard the arguments that because we have such a strong SPED program,
Mm-hmm.
that people move to Milford to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there saying, and?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we should cut the SPED programs, and that way people wouldn't come here. And I'm like, okay, seriously?
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of cold, but tell me you don't say a prayer every day saying, thank you that I don't need
Yeah. You're
the
right.
SPED.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I have 4,400 kids,
Mm-hmm.
all the kids in Milford,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, I've gotten yelled at for saying, these kids aren't any more special or
Mhm.
any less special
Mm-hmm.
than the other 4,400.
Yeah, you're right.
They're our kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some are great at athletics, some are great at academics,
Mm-hmm.
some need help.
Mm-hmm.
And as a Milfordian, I'm not doing anything special by trying to help all the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it was my child, I certainly would thank, you know, my prayers would say thank you for having a program and having people like Jen Walsh
Yeah.
who
Jen's
really
great.
care about the kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, I'm struggling because charter school sounds like this utopia that you open the doors
what
and the
it's sold
sunshine
as.
comes out.
Yeah, the solution to
Yeah.
all the problems in education. And really the solution is to get involved and care about your kids' education and care about what's going on in the school district.
That was the best lesson back then, Principal of Brookside, Jose Vieira.
Yeah, I remember
Taught me.
Jose. Yep.
Now, we knew his family from Portugal.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh yeah, his father and mother and my father and mother were close way back.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked him, I said, Jose, what can I do to get the best education here in Milford if I bring my daughter? Because we took Emily up to the Fay School.
Okay.
Oh, it was pretty.
Yeah, where is that?
Southborough.
Okay, yeah.
It was gorgeous. Now, it's a private school. A lot of kids live there. I can't think of anything more horrible in my life than not having my daughter home every night.
I know.
But the education.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the kids came out, their speech, their manners, perfect.
Yeah.
And then I asked the girl, I said, well, tell me about where you're from. She said, well, I'm from Hopkinton. I said, oh, great. How much do you get involved in your town? Oh, we never get involved with anybody.
Yeah.
I said, you don't know your own town?
Mm-hmm.
She goes, no, I'm here all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at my wife, I said, no.
Good for you.
No, there's something to be said. I'm proud to be from Milford.
Yeah, and being involved with your community.
When I grew up, I did what every Milford kid wants to do. I ran away.
Mm-hmm.
Ran to Worcester to go to school.
Yeah.
Then went down to D.C., loved living in D.C., moved over to Paris.
No kidding,
Enjoyed
really?
living in Paris for years.
Yeah.
But when it came down to my daughter, all of a sudden the gravitational pull, I wanted her to have roots.
Yeah.
I wanted her to understand what being part of a community is. And it's not all kids that look and are in the same socioeconomic level, either below or above her. Because once she got out in the real world,
right.
Okay, welcome to reality. And I couldn't be more proud of what the school system did. Now, Jose was right. I got involved.
Yeah.
And I knew all the teachers she had. I got on the parent-teacher councils. I don't know that I could ask for better. Then why are these charter schools succeeding in small towns like Milford? I can understand in big cities, in dangerous areas, because if I had to worry about the security or, the safety of my child, okay, forget the rest. But there's a lot of these. You say Franklin. Franklin's like Milford.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you mean by succeeding. How exactly are they succeeding? If they're pushing away certain kids and just educating
they're
some
multiplying.
kids, they are multiplying.
I'm saying
they just added
the
additional
proponents of charter
right
are succeeding because they're multiplying the schools.
Yeah, right, against the population. But Franklin is in a tough spot right now because the population is aging. They don't have as many kids feeding into the school system, and now this charter school opened up, just expanded the seats, I think by another 500 or something like
500?
that. I think so. I don't quote me on that.
That's a whole
I'm on
school.
TV, but yeah.
No, but
well, and it turns out I was reading. I think it was in the Milford Daily News the other day. The superintendent is now setting up a task force to consider closing one of the schools, elementary schools, because they've lost so many kids. So there you have it. That's one of the threats that comes. And then you've got an entire school shut down and essentially moved over to a charter school that you have no control over.
And I think that's the part that bothers me the most.
Me too.
Town meeting has always done the right thing.
Yeah.
You got a couple hundred people who somehow get together. Half of them are diametrically opposed to the other half in their views.
Right.
But at the end of the day, when it comes down to taking care of our kids or our town, our elders, those 200 people that don't see eye to eye somehow come together.
Yeah.
Trading that for people in Boston, hey, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help you. Yeah,
Right.
Thank you, help me by leaving.
Yeah.
So I guess you got me thinking, and I'm
Oh,
not
good.
getting a warm, fuzzy feeling about this utopia.
Yeah.
So they can select kids on their own standards?
No, not quite. They have to use a lottery system. So every kid if they've enrolled into the lottery, I don't know what the process is for that. They're part of a lottery system, and then if their number gets chosen, they get to come to the school. Now, what sort of, now you have to think, so say my parents are really low functioning, are they gonna be able to go through the matriculation process? Maybe not, who knows, you know? So there's little issues like that, or what if my parents are undocumented? You know, are they gonna go through the matriculation process? Maybe they're afraid to do so, maybe they don't understand exactly what the process
But even
is.
if they're documented,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could not have asked for more loving, more caring parents.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad had no clue
Yeah,
on academics.
yeah,
He would be told that he should go to this school to support his son,
mm-hmm.
put on his hat, put on his coat,
Yeah,
and he was there in
mm-hmm.
the audience.
Yeah,
I don't think he ever knew how much it meant for me to look out
yeah,
and always see him and my mother
yeah,
there, knowing that they have no clue why they're there.
right, but it makes a big difference, you know?
So now, somebody like my parents,
Mm-hmm.
they would have no idea how to sign up for these schools.
Mm-hmm.
So even if I wasn't a problem child, I may not get, even if I was the top,
Mm-hmm.
which I wasn't, but if I was the top 10%, 5%, whatever, 1%,
Mm-hmm.
I may not get a chance because my parents just didn't understand enough.
Right, exactly. And then if you're in there and you cause trouble, charter schools in Massachusetts, I don't know about the national averages, but in Massachusetts they've got the highest rates of exclusion, which is the new word for expulsion. So if a kid's
Exclusion.
yeah, so it's the same thing as being expelled from
I
school.
was saying you
Now
get kicked out.
You get kicked out. Highest rates. I think in the inner cities, it's about 45% of kids that are enrolled in charter schools end up going back to the regular schools, and in suburban districts, 40%. And now that money, so if they leave mid-year,
Well, you've lost the money. You're not getting.
you're not getting it
it's
back
not
until the
prorated.
next year, right? Exactly. And especially that's true with kids who are excluded from school. You're not going to see that money until, you know, and it adds up. It's a lot of resources.
That's amazing because
Mm-hmm.
you hear that charter schools take resources, but I think most people feel, okay, if they took a kid, that's less money the school has to spend
Mm-hmm.
in district.
Yeah.
But I can't take 2 square feet of your library and shut it down.
Right.
I still have to pay for the whole library.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so the class numbers will go up, you know, and that's a really important thing. People try to downplay that you know, that student to teacher ratio isn't important, but it is. You know, if you're in a class with 30 kids as opposed to 15 kids, you're going to be a much more effective teacher handling 15 kids than 30. There's no question about that, and you can ask anyone who's taught that's the
Well,
case.
that was the whole initiative where we had with the Chromebooks.
How do you
we
mean?
bought, the teachers had said if I had Chromebooks,
Mm-hmm.
I could better tailor my time to having everybody in class being taught at a variable level.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits. You know, they're great just because they're instant access to information. So when you turn that on, you've automatically got links to a lot of the library's resources. So you can search world-class databases and things that the state gives to us because we have a librarian on staff. So because I'm there, we get access to all these excellent academic databases and stuff. So you're not just Googling things; you're using, you know, peer-reviewed resources and stuff like that. So originally, I said, "Oh, geez, the Chromebooks. You know, is this going to be the end of libraries?" But it was the exact opposite. Our circulation rates have gone through the roof. Our database use has gone through the roof. So it's really been great.
Well, I mean, you think about it today, a library isn't a library that just has books.
Yeah, we've got a lot of different stuff. We still have an excellent collection. So when you were there, you saw the library. It's a big, beautiful library, and we've got a lot of people visiting all the time. We've got, I think, about 20,000 books. Still 20,000 books, which is a good number. Yeah, and it's really an impressive library. I would put certain sections of it that I've worked with faculty on developing. I would put up against some college libraries. certain sections, not the entire thing, but we've got a real strong collection.
I think of our library downtown, and C.W. Mars unites us with anything we need.
Right.
Is the high school have the same type system?
Yeah, so you could come up to me, a kid could come up to me, oh, I want such and such a book, and within a week, maybe, most, I'll get the book in through interlibrary loan. But there's also things called document deliveries. So, for example, if it's just a chapter from a book or an article or something like that, that is, sometimes a matter of hours, sometimes a day, and we can get basically anything you want.
But that's college level, because when I used to go into our library at Holy Cross,
Yeah.
I'd be looking up a peer-reviewed article on chemistry.
Yeah.
And back then we had to wait days. Now, my interns, they expect it instantly.
Yeah, you'd be amazed at what some of the things that our kids are doing at the high school level. It's stuff that I was doing in college.
But see, that's critical, because like I say, when I first got to school, okay, taking calculus, they've already had 2 years.
Yeah, right.
This is new to me, they've had 2 years.
My daughter, she can read it. She's in first grade. She can read better than I could in like third grade. It's unbelievable.
But that's, to me, what we feel proud of.
Yeah.
That the kids are exceeding anything we ever did.
Yep.
But I'd hate to see resources taken away.
Me too.
Because of that. We're coming to the end.
Okay. That was fast.
Any last words for our 6 loyal viewers?
Yeah. Milford Public Schools, it's a great place to work. It's a great place to send your kids. I send my own kids there, and it's important that the community's involved in the schools. That's absolutely essential to building a really strong culture and making our schools excellent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for explaining what utopia really
Yeah.
is. As always, get involved. I can't say any more and any more times. The best lesson I got from an old principal was, they would be upset that I call him old, but was that if I want to get the best education for my kids, get involved. There's so much this town offers. Our budget, I'd say it's more than adequate. Of course, the teachers will always come back and say they have more needs than we fund, but we're paying 63% of a $110 million budget to educate our kids, and to be proud of the 4,400, or I guess it's gone up 100 this year, and what they do. I can't say enough how proud I am of the schools and what our children do. So as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, thank you for tuning in, and may tomorrow be a better night than tonight. God bless.
Not too long since I've been home.